Welcome back. Good morning. I hope it's morning when you're watching this. We were talking about taxonomy. We were talking about the categories of taxonomy and the domains, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. These different domains are based on genetic similarities, so this is going to be important. One thing you may recall, or maybe it didn't strike you as odd, but we didn't mention anything about viruses. So what's the deal there? What's going on with viruses? Well, viruses live in that kind of twilight zone, that fuzzy region between what is living and what is non-living. A virus floating around out there in the air and landing on whatever, be careful out there. Stay clean, cold and flu season, people, as I've said many times. A viral particle is not considered to be living. It is a very, very small. So typical viruses are going to be much smaller than a bacteria. And in fact, most viruses will pass right through really, really, really tiny pored filter paper. So going back years when scientists were trying to identify what was causing maybe an illness of a particular plant, so years and years and years ago, they figured that they were looking for bacteria. And if you take a diseased, let's go with diseased tobacco leaves, and we're trying to figure out, why are these leaves diseased? Probably it's a bacterial infection or a fungal infection. Some sort of living creature has infected those leaves. So what they did, they eventually took huge amounts of these diseased tobacco leaves, and they crush, made solution, started pouring that through very fine filter paper. And materials came through, and they kept large, like bacterial large, which is still obviously pretty small, but the idea was that the large bacterium would be stuck on one side of the filter paper, and then they could isolate that disease-causing agent. However, they couldn't find anything. They couldn't find any bacteria. And the juice that would make it through that fine filter paper, that was tested and was found to be infectious. So whatever it was that was causing this disease was much smaller than typical bacteria or typical, at that time, known agents of disease. Virus literally means poison. So these are very, very simple. They, just in general now, they're going to have a kind of protective protein capsid, and you don't need to get this just yet, so just listen here right now, just listen. And then I'll get you the notes in kind of a nice outline form in a little bit. So they've got this protective protein coat. They'll have maybe a few little goodies on the inside that'll help them survive. And then, most importantly, they're going to have genetic material on the inside. So a virus could be DNA, could be RNA. And again, we've got that protective coat or that capsid, and that's a protein-like material. Well, why aren't viruses considered living? We've talked about the characteristics of living creatures, all the characteristics. I want you to think about that. What are some of the characteristics of life? We talked about this at the beginning of the year. Living things are made of cells. Living things are capable of evolving, and when we talk about evolving, we're talking about evolving as populations evolve. What else? What are the other characteristics of life? Living things have a metabolism. They try to achieve homeostasis. What else can you think of? Living things need a constant supply of energy. Well, viruses cannot do all of those things that we just talked about. Remember, in order to be considered living, you have to run the gamut of all of those characteristics of life. A virus is not cellular. A virus does have genetic material though. But again, remember, you have to have all the characteristics. Well, so viruses aren't going to be located. Typically, they won't be located on any taxonomy chart, any of the domains. When did they arise? Scientists think that they probably arose before living cells arose. So you got to go back, 3.8 billion years, according to fossil evidence. Don't quote me on that number, it's pretty close. 3.8 billion years ago, fossil evidence suggests that yes, there were prokaryotic living creatures, simple living creatures. But of course, remember, simple doesn't, when I say simple, I mean simple compared to a eukaryotic cell. It's still a complex living machine, a single cell organism. Anyway, viruses probably arose before those living things arose. Again, although there might be some intellectual controversy going on there with that. All right, so how do viruses affect us? Well, look around. There we go. Hey, wait a minute. How did you guys get in here? Everything's locked. We need two great minds like you right here in this situation. You guys have got to see this. Mr. Spock, Albert, you came just in the nick of time. I'd love to hear what you have to say about all this. What's the deal? I thought you guys were going to beam out of the room with me. How's it going? I'm back. That was interesting. That was very interesting. So, we're going to get to a PowerPoint. We're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of viruses, mainly bad and ugly. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of prokaryotic bacteria. One thing I want you to keep in mind is the lytic cycle of a virus versus the lysogenic cycle of the virus. So these are different mechanisms through which viruses reproduce. Both are important, and both have important implications in treatments. And of course, we will be kind of talking about viruses and bacteria in terms of disease-causing modes, symptoms, how people get infected, and that sort of thing, because we always try to keep kind of a health science sort of bent on the stuff that we do here. All right, so we're going to do a PowerPoint. I want you to listen and let's take good notes. There'll be a project or two concerning viruses and bacteria. So I'll let you know about that at a different time. And let's do it.